Now, read along as the directions for Part C are being read. Part C. Directions. In this part of the test, you will hear several short talks. After each talk, you will hear some questions. The talks and the questions will not be repeated. After you hear a question, read the 4 possible answers in your test book and choose the best answer. Then, on your answer sheet, find the number of the question and fill in the space that corresponds to the letter of the answer you have chosen. Here is an example. On the recording, you hear, "Listen to a professor talk to his class about a television program."
I'd like to tell you about an interesting TV program that'll be shown this coming Thursday. It'll be on from 9 to 10 p.m. on Channel 4. It's part of a series called Mysteries of Human Biology. The subject of the program is the human brain, how it functions and how it can malfunction. Topics that will be covered are dreams, memory, and depression. These topics are illustrated with outstanding computer animation that makes the explanations easy to follow. Make an effort to see this show. Since we've been studying the nervous system in class, I know you'll find it very helpful.
Now listen to a sample question. What is the main purpose of the program? In your test book you read, A. To demonstrate the latest use of computer graphics. B. To discuss the possibility of an economic depression. C. To explain the workings of the brain. D. To dramatize a famous mystery story. The best answer to the question, "What is the main purpose of the program?" is C. To explain the workings of the brain. Therefore, the correct choice is C. Now listen to another sample question. Why does the professor recommend watching the program? In your test book you read, A. It is required of all science majors. B. It will feature the professor's research. C. It can help viewers improve their memory skills. D. It will help with coursework. The best answer to the question, "Why does the professor recommend watching the program?" is D. It will help with coursework. Therefore, the correct choice is D. Go on to the next page. Now, we will begin Part C with the first talk. Questions 40 through 43. Listen to part of a presentation about the elm tree.
Good evening, I'm Steve Johnson, and I represent the American Elm Society. Today I'd like to introduce you to some of the problems faced by elm trees. Many of you are familiar with this huge tree. It's found in many areas of the U.S. and Canada, in cities and small towns. Well, as you may know, the American elm has been threatened by a dangerous disease. The disease is caused by a fungus. When that fungus infects the tree, it blocks the circulation of water inside the tree. As a result, the tree's cells don't receive water, and without water, of course, they can't survive. The tree's leaves become dry, fall off, and eventually the tree dies. You may be interested in how the disease is transmitted. Well, a very small insect called elm bark beetle brings the fungus with it. The beetle uses the tree to reproduce itself. The female builds channels in the wood for the eggs, and at the same time, it infects the tree with the fungus. The worst thing is that the process seems unstoppable, because once a beetle leaves an infected tree, it carries the fungus on its body and poisons a healthy tree. Of course, we are trying to fight the disease. In the past, infected trees were simply cut down. That method reduced the number of infected trees, but it never stopped the disease. Now experts are trying to get to the root of the problem. They're working on ways to control the beetle that spreads the disease.
Number 40. What is the talk mainly about? Number 41. What is causing the death of infected elm trees? Number 42. According to the speaker, what causes a healthy elm tree to become weak? Number 43. According to the speaker, how do experts hope to limit the spread of the disease in the future? Questions 44 through 47. Listen to part of a lecture in an astronomy class.
Today, we're going to continue talking about the sun. In particular, we're going to be talking about those dark areas on the sun that are known as sunspots. Many people think you need a telescope to see sunspots, but that's not true. They're actually visible to the naked eye, especially when the sun is down near the horizon or when it's covered by a thin layer of clouds. Now, your eyes are very delicate organs, so I don't recommend observing sunspots with the naked eye, but it is possible. In fact, records show that the Chinese were observing sunspots with the naked eye over 2,000 years ago. And when the Chinese saw the sunspots, they assumed they were looking at spots on the sun. But when the Europeans first noticed sunspots, they didn't realize what they were looking at. They either ignored them completely, or they thought what they were seeing was Mercury passing in front of the sun. It wasn't until the early 1600s, when European astronomers started using telescopes, that the Europeans really understood what they were looking at and began to study sunspots scientifically. Now, with a telescope, just like with the naked eye, the sun's too bright to observe directly, unless it's down near the horizon. So, a big breakthrough came when a man named Benedetto Castelli figured out a way to project the sun's image through a telescope in such a way that you could observe sunspots even when the sun was high in the sky.
Number 44. What is the lecture mainly about? Number 45. What does the professor imply about observing sunspots with the naked eye? Number 46. According to the professor, what were the Chinese first to realize? Number 47. What role did Benedetto Castelli play in the study of sunspots? Questions 48 through 50. Listen to part of a lecture in a history class.
The Cyrus cylinder is a 2,600-year-old historical artifact, a political document, really, that recorded the political intentions of King Cyrus of Persia. The cylinder, which is barrel-shaped and made of sun-baked clay, is about the size of a large melon. Its surface is covered in ancient Babylonian script. It was made shortly after Cyrus became the ruler of the largest empire the world had ever known. Cyrus's empire extended from Egypt to India and included people of many diverse faiths and cultures. The cylinder was discovered almost 150 years ago in what today is Iraq. The archaeologists who found it were able to restore it and decipher its text quite quickly, even though a third of it was missing. That's because a clay tablet discovered earlier contained a text identical to the one inscribed on the cylinder, so researchers were able to fill in the missing parts. Inscribed cylinders were not uncommon at the time of King Cyrus, and as objects go, this cylinder was pretty typical. but as a document, it was not typical. In it, King Cyrus wrote about his intention to promote cultural tolerance and religious freedom as a means to political stability and peace. The founders of the United States studied King Cyrus's model of government when they talked about creating a country where many different communities would live side by side. We know, for example, that one of those founders, Thomas Jefferson, was a great fan of Cyrus and owned 2 biographies about him.
Number 48. Why does the professor mention a melon? Number 49. What point does the professor make about King Cyrus's empire? Number 50. What does the professor say about Thomas Jefferson, a founder of the United States? This is the end of Section 1, Listening Comprehension. Stop work on Section 1. This is a reminder. At the end of the test, the supervisor will collect all of the test books. You may not leave until all of the test books have been collected. End of recording.